Let's wait for the stream to fire up all across the beautiful fruited plain of the internet before we can go ahead and get started. We got to make sure the tubes connect themselves and make sure all the feds are in the chat. Is the FBI in the chat? Make sure the FBI is here. We don't like to get started before the FBI shows up. All right, are they here? Okay, good. Oh, the FBI is here. That's great. We can go ahead and get started. So let's do it, shall we? Hello, my friends, and welcome back to yet another episode of Watching the Watchers Live. My name is Robert Gouveia. I am a criminal defense attorney at the R&R Law Group, located in the always beautiful and sunny Scottsdale, Arizona. And today, my friends, we are talking about muzzles. You know, there's some interesting things going on out of the Biden White House, and not a lot of people are able to talk about it. It's almost like they've been muzzled, and we're going to learn a lot more about that because there was a new story that came out from the media and then was corroborated by the White House. But they searched the Rehoboth Beach house in Delaware, and we've been waiting for some time until this was going to happen. We know that they found a bunch of stuff at the Penn Biden Center. Then they were basically sending those commercial shredders over there to the Biden residence in Wilmington, Delaware. And now this is the other location. Biden's got, a lot of houses for somebody who likes, to take people's money. He's got a lot of properties. And we're going to go through this story because his lawyer, Bob Bauer, came out with an announcement. The media actually broke this story first. That's where we started getting wind of this. And the media is going to ask the White House about this because they're saying, would you guys have released this statement if you didn't get caught, if you didn't get busted trying to conceal all of this stuff, trying to essentially cover it up as they've been doing for a long time? We'll go through the official announcement from the president's lawyer. Then we've got a ton of clips from this guy, and we introduced him a long time ago, Ian Sams, and we thought that he was going to be around a lot more, and it turns out he is. They were sort of trial running him, I think, 2 weeks ago, and now he's like full frontal Ian Sams, unfortunately for us. And there's a bunch of clips. Now, many of these are pretty short because they're doing this interesting thing where he's only taking questions while he's sort of, outside. And, Trump did this a lot where he would sort of just take questions on the fly, and it made the press disoriented a bit. And they're using the same tactic. They're kind of using the Trump tactic where he's only taking questions like outside the White House in the middle of the lawn. It's a very interesting situation, but the media is asking him a bunch of questions. In particular, there's one little tidbit that I really want to dig into today, which is this new reveal from James Comer. He is on the Oversight Committee, and we're going to hear a lot more about him in the second segment because he was really sort of leading the charge today in Congress. But yesterday he was on with Sean Hannity, and apparently NARA came. Remember, we've played all the different letters back and forth, the head librarian, Deborah Steidel-Wall, and so on and so forth, sending letters back and forth. But Comer came out and explained that NARA may have been silenced by somebody. We don't know who was doing the silencing. White House, Department of Justice, who knows? But Comer said, right, that they interviewed the National Archives yesterday, the transcribed interview, and that the National Archives said that they got a muzzle put on them as well. So Ian Sams got asked about this by the media, and they also brought that question over to Karine Jean-Pierre because it's a good question. If the White House is muzzling other sort of, components of this, the question is why? Well, obviously it's because they're covering it up, but they don't get to play two sides of the same game here. They can't come out and tell us they're being open and transparent while simultaneously covering up every facet of this investigation. It doesn't work that way. Well, shouldn't. We'll see what the media has to say about it. Karine got asked several questions. She punted on a lot of them, but one, how is this transparent? Why isn't Ian Sams coming in here? Who silenced NARA, the National Archives? The media is catching on to this one. And they're asking about transparency. And meanwhile, Kamala Harris is explaining how spaceships work to astronauts elsewhere in the White House. So that's what's going on. That's all going to be in the first segment coming out of the Biden administration. Then next, we're going to go over to Congress. Very busy day today in Congress. And we decided today to stick with the Oversight Committee. There was also a Judiciary Committee that was taking place today. But, some of the spicier takes, I think, were out of this committee. And so we went this direction today. I also like what I'm seeing from Comer. We've got several people we're going to listen to, a lot of clips on this one because there was a lot of back and forth. But Comer is going to open this up. There are 3 witnesses that we're going to hear from. in this whole hearing. We're going to listen to Comer. We're going to also hear from Lauren Boebert, Andy Biggs from Arizona, Lisa McClain, and then Marjorie Taylor Greene. We're all weighing in on this big issue of pandemic fraud and how much money was wasted and flushed down the toilet. So they're asking these three gentlemen questions about that. Michael Horowitz, chair of the pandemic response for the Accountability Committee. We're also going to hear from Gene Dodoro, the comptroller for the U.S. GAO, Government Accountability Office. And then lastly, we'll hear from David Smith, who works with the Secret Service because they're supposed to investigate, fraud and corruption and all that stuff. So as you can see, my friends, we have a lot to get to today. And if you want to be a part of the program, the best place to do that, the best place to be is over at watchingthewatchers.locals.com, where you can join our amazing community. We do member-only streams. We had a morning member-only stream today. We're doing another one tomorrow. So if you're looking for some extra content and some extra friends, come check us out at watchingthewatchers.locals.com. It's a great place to be. I also want to thank the sponsors of this show. Today we have Brick House Nutrition, which is where you can get Field of Greens, which is a tremendous product. Going to make you feel vigorous and vibrant. It's healthy servings of fruits and vegetables every day from our friends at brickhousenutrition.com, and you can save 15% with code Robert. So look at it. It makes you just feel vibrant and vigorous. So check that out. Use code Robert to save 15% off your order. And of course, our law firm, the R&R Law Group, located in Scottsdale, Arizona. And we help good people charged with crimes find safety, clarity, and hope. And if you are looking for a lawyer, we're the team for you. Visit us at rrlawaz.com. All right, my friends. And so now let's get into business, shall we? I see some very familiar faces in the chat. I'm glad that everybody's here today on this beautiful, beautiful first day of February. Let's get started. Busted. The Biden administration caught again with the FBI and the DOJ searching Joe Biden's property and not telling us about it. We're going to go through this story because the president's lawyer, Bob Bauer, issued a statement, but kind of right around the same time the media was revealing all of this to us. The White House for a long time has said that they are honest, open, and transparent. We're going to check in with Ian Sams and see what he has to say about it, along with Karine, before we finally get an opinion from Kamala at the conclusion of this segment. But let's start off with the backstory. Now, if you were following this, as I was this morning, there was a lot of news stories that were posted, and they had different headlines, right? This morning, it was all, the headlines really involved different things like another search is continuing. Another search is ongoing. The president is having a separate home searched again, and they weren't notified about it. Karine Jean-Pierre didn't come out and say, hey, something's going on tomorrow, or so on and so forth, right? None of it happened. But then you fast forward, and a lot of the headlines switched. They all switched to, they found no classified documents. And you go, oh, that's great news, right? That's a really positive framing on this story, is to explain that there were no documents, and this was all just to make sure that, the T's were crossed and the I's were dotted, and that the whole thing has been very cooperative. And as Karine reminds us, Joe Biden takes this very, very seriously, but not really, because he's got documents all over the place. Now, why are they searching this residence? Okay, we are now in February 2023. They found the first batch of documents November 2nd, 2022. And the Biden lawyers, as we've talked about many times here, were obstructing the DOJ efforts in that interim many times, because we saw repeatedly reported from the Washington Post and others that John Lausch, the DOJ, asked Biden's personal lawyers, stop searching for documents. They didn't listen. They kept searching for documents. How do we know this? They kept finding them. It wasn't the FBI that was finding them. So you have to forgive us when we're a little bit skeptical that they found no classified documents several months after the Biden people had a full opportunity to clean the whole situation up. Now, we'll see what comes out after the fact. They didn't find anything. That's great. Now, we also know that the National Archives has confirmed to us that they don't even have an inventory on all of the documents. We saw that in Deborah Steidel-Wall's letter. She confirmed when James Comer was writing, saying, I want to know what outstanding records exist. I want to know what overdue library books there are still out there. She said, I don't know, because we don't have inventory. I can't tell you what the total universe of documents was in the Joe Biden vice presidency, for example. So if Joe Biden was shredding documents, I don't know that they would ever even know about that, or that there would be any way to track that, because there's no chain of custody apparently on all of these documents. And that's not my words. That's Deborah Steidel-Wall, who told us that in her letter back to James Comer. So the media will parade this around. Wow, no classified documents. That's great. Don't know if they were shredded. Don't know, right? Another theme on this was that Joe Biden was reading the classified documents and transcribing the classified information into his notebook. So yeah, no, that's great. They didn't find any classified documents. Did they find notebooks with classified information? Let's see what the article says. The FBI search took place after documents with classified markings were found in two other residences, one in his office, one in Wilmington. They say that no classified documents were found during the FBI's search of Joe Biden's residence in Rehoboth Beach, Delaware, on Wednesday. The DOJ planned search. We'll go through the statement from the lawyer. The FBI search of Biden's Rehoboth Beach house came amid ongoing classified documents investigations. A source familiar with the matter said no warrant was involved and the search was consensual, which is very, very unusual, because as we know, the DOJ told the Biden lawyers stop searching. They kept searching, which means they were obstructing the DOJ's investigation. When they said Trump was doing that, they got a warrant and they set the FBI down there. So why didn't they do that in this case? It was consensual. Great. Earlier Wednesday, Bauer said in a statement the department was conducting a search. And we'll go through his statement. Documents with classified markings were found over from Wilmington. This says that the National Archives, which is responsible for retaining records, declined to comment on the search. And we're going to listen to James Comer a little bit later. He's going to explain to us that if you go over to the National Archives website, they're very chatty when it came to other records. Like with Donald Trump, they were putting out all sorts of statements and press releases combating that misinformation. But when it involves their guy, they're not too talkative, are they? The FBI searched the offices of the Penn Biden Center. Ian Sams, a spokesman, took questions outside. He says, "We've been fully cooperative." We're going to listen to him in a minute. "We're going to continue to provide information," he says. News of the search comes on the heels of ongoing investigations into Trump, into Pence. Other senators and Oversight Committee members have been talking about it. And so that's the update. Now, this is the official statement that came from Mr. Bob Bauer, the president's personal lawyer. Here's what he said. He writes, Jackie Heinrich posted this. She is a White House correspondent. She posted this February 1, 7:50 a.m. This came out from Bob Bauer. Biden's lawyer says, "Today, with the president's full support and cooperation," wow, "the DOJ is conducting a planned search of his home in Rehoboth, Delaware. Under DOJ standard procedures, in the interest of operational security and integrity, it sought to do this work without advance public notice, and we agreed to cooperate." The search today is a further step in a thorough and timely DOJ process we will continue to fully support and facilitate. We will have further information at the conclusion of today's search, right? So that's kind of the first statement. We're going to listen to see what Ian Sams says about this. So in other words, he's agreeing that they were going to keep this outside of public notice, right? He's very careful. This lawyer is pretty clever. It sought to do this work without advance public notice, and we agreed to cooperate. That doesn't answer the question if they would have made this public if the media had caught them, right? The media has people staked out of his different residences now. They're actually watching, right? And they're like, oh, well, here's that bunch of FBI agents, it looks like. And so they're reporting on this stuff. So Twitter sort of had notice of this before these statements were released. Everybody was tweeting about it last night. Boom, we wake up today. She posts 7:50 a.m. today. Here's what's going on. So it is very curious, right? If the media didn't catch them, would they have made this public? He doesn't say that. Without advance public notice, and we agreed to cooperate. Okay, but after the search, would you have then disclosed all of this or not? Probably not. The media is going to ask Karine about that when we get there. But let's turn our attention to Ian Sams. Now, we've explained that he's sort of front and center on this. Karine Jean-Pierre, they took the football away from her, and they basically gave it to a carbon copy version of her who's a little bit, better with words. And he is now handling all of these questions, and he's doing it outside on the White House lawn, essentially. So he just walks out, and the media surrounds him, and they start asking him a bunch of questions. And it's sort of an interesting strategy, right? Trump did this It is difficult for the media. They're all standing around. Everybody's shouting questions. It's really hard to hear. Okay, there's no microphone. So one media person asks a question and he's recording, but the person who's, 10 feet away on the other side of the circle is recording and can't pick up the audio. And then he asks a question and that guy can't pick up the audio. So it's very disorienting, and it's very hard to clip this stuff, and it's hard to, really deliver good communication. That's kind of the point of this. It kind of makes the media look, kind of dumb and discombobulated, which is why Trump used it so effectively. They're using the same strategy here to try to drag this out and to sort of, make this a difficult line of inquiry every time the media wants to dig in. But they did. And so let's turn over to our first clip. The media asks Ian Sams, how long was this planned? Okay, the FBI showed up in Rehoboth. We have been asking you, Ian, and Karine, and Bob Bauer, and Biden, and the DOJ, and the White House counsel's office, and everybody for all sorts of information about this. And you just tell us that there's nothing going on. And then suddenly we wake up and the FBI is searching the president's house. How long was this planned?
You said the search was planned. How long was it planned for? Were there any parameters for the search? You said they searched everything on the property. And then the other question, was there any reason to believe that anybody else in the Biden family would have also had access to these same documents?
Yeah, I'm not going to
question, how long was the search planned for? Next question, anyone else have access to these documents, right? Because of course that's Hunter Biden, and we have seen some very interesting emails from him that look like they were copy and pasted from defense intelligence briefings that got sent over to interesting business relationship individuals in other parts of the world, foreign countries, that conveniently were funneling money and other things back into him.
speak to sort of the negotiations or discussions or collaborations between the president's personal attorney and DOJ in establishing the search. We're cooperating fully with the Justice Department. We're cooperating fully with the Justice Department and ensuring that they have access to the House, the Rehoboth House today, the Wilmington House previously.
So they're going to keep going. So he doesn't answer the questions, right? Don't want to step in front of any of this stuff. Don't want to get in the way. You're going to hear a lot of that from him. So we'll just get right into it. Another question came in about transparency. And this is from, again, most of these clips I think are from Fox News. Ian Sams gets asked about this concept of transparency. Like broken records, that's what Karine Jean-Pierre has been telling us. We've been open and transparent this entire time when we know they haven't. Okay, we've gone through the timeline here. I don't want to make every single show about the timeline, but there's a bunch of questions we have about the transparency that the White House has been providing all of us, including what happened on November 3rd. Why were they still searching for documents that they found on December 20th? Why didn't Karine Jean-Pierre tell us anything about that second batch of documents when she came out and lied by omission to us on January 12th, the same day Robert Hur got appointed, right? Why were all of these things kept under the rug for so long? Well, it's because they were trying to cover it up, but they can't, continue to lie to us and tell us this was all open and transparent when this stuff keeps going on.
You called Ian, why did it take so long for the search of the Rehoboth Beach residence to occur? And who today from the White House, if anyone, was there?
That's a good question. So we've been working directly with the Justice Department from the very beginning, as soon as the initial set of materials was discovered at the Penn Biden Center.
So it sounds like they have been working with the DOJ, so they knew this search was going on all the way back till when? November 2nd is kind of what he said. We've been working with them from the very beginning. So they had this information. They could have communicated it to all of us. The search was happening. They didn't.
And it was reported to the archives, and the archives notified the Justice Department about the finding. And we've worked, the president's personal attorneys, I should say, have worked closely with the Justice Department through this process, and White House counsel's office as well. White House counsel's office was not present today to answer that question. And we've been following the Justice Department's lead and coordinating these searches with them. And so, if you want to ask granular questions about the decision making about the search or the timing or anything like that,
talk to the DOJ.
I'd refer you to the Justice Department.
Yeah, doesn't want to answer any of those questions, right? Talk to them. And so this stupid game goes around and around again. It's like a merry-go-round. White House refers over to the White House counsel spokesperson, Ian Sams. Ian Sams can't really talk too much about it because the personal lawyer to the president is also working on it. And if you have any questions about literally any other component of the investigation, well, I got to talk to NARA about that one, or talk to the DOJ. And we're just following their lead. And their lead, of course, is, in my humble opinion here, is to protect their administration. It's to protect the president, because Merrick Garland is Joe Biden's AG. So why are they going to go and suddenly go hard against Joe Biden? No, they'll go raid President Trump, but they're not going to do the same thing against Joe Biden. And so they don't want to answer any questions. Everybody's pointing their fingers around and around again, and it becomes very frustrating. So the media dives in and they ask, what about any additional documents? Okay, how about some specifics about what they found? We know that there are ideas that there are individual documents, okay, like one piece of paper is one classified document. Two pieces of paper is two classified documents. But what if it is a document that's a binder, or it is a memo, right? A classified intelligence document that is a briefing on, a big foreign trip or something that involves a few hundred pages or a few thousand pages, or classified materials, meaning a box of materials that contain other things, right? The language has been very fleeting. We really don't know what they're talking about here. And so the media wants to know more now. Okay, look, why are they searching Rehoboth? First of all, do they not think that Joe Biden is being honest with them? I mean, the lawyers searched Rehoboth too, right? So they would have made a recommendation to the DOJ. We did our due diligence. Everything's fine. Do the lawyers for the U.S. Attorney's Office not believe Biden's lawyers? Do they need to do a second search? Was some of the additional information that was found in Wilmington or in Penn Biden Center, was it so serious and damning that the DOJ just had to do a double check, a secondary sweep, because they didn't trust them? And if that's the case, why did it take months now? We're in February now to investigate all of this stuff. We'll learn more if we can know more about the documents. And so they get asked specifically about this. Ian Sams, how many documents were there?
I can say confidently whether you believe there are any more classified documents. If there were none found today, do you think this closes the door on classified documents that will be discovered?
Question is about the classified documents. Very hard to hear. Can you assure us that there aren't any more, that there are not going to be any more? Have we got the totality of all the documents?
Look, the Justice Department is engaged in an ongoing investigation. An ongoing investigation, I should add, that the president has been fully cooperative in, offering unprecedented access to his home in Wilmington, to his home, every single room of his home in Rehoboth, as well as the one in Wilmington.
Yeah, because he didn't want a warrant, right? He didn't want a warrant, right? Because that's what they would have done, right? They would have issued a warrant and gone and raided him. Is that what you're saying?
And giving them access to the information they need. He's moving quickly to get them the information that they need.
That's all because he's in direct violation of the law. Obviously. What's he going to do? Trump made a claim. I'm so sick of this stupid talking point. They say that, look, it's this obstruction talking point. They're trying to drive a wedge between these two issues. They're trying to say Trump, the possession by Trump was not illegal. The obstruction was the problem. And they're saying that Joe Biden is not obstructing here. He has no basis because he has no claim to the documents in the first place. Trump made a claim to the documents, which is why he is allowed to use those defenses. Trump can say, I was not being cooperative because I have a claim. They're mine. They're declassified. They're presidential records. I've got lawful authority to have them. Biden can't make that claim, right? This happened when he was a senator. They shouldn't have even been there. We heard from Ted Cruz the possibility that those documents are the one theory as to how those documents left the skiff and ended up in Joe Biden's residence is that they were inserted into different locations on his body. We speculated maybe diapers. You could probably fit a bunch in there. You crinkle a little bit when you're walking around, but probably nobody would even care. They'd be like, that's Joe. He's just crinkling all the time. It's probably why Jerry Nadler has been waddling around Congress all the time. He's probably just carrying confidential documents, classified materials all over the place. Yeah. So that's a good question, right? Where is it coming from? Why did it take so long to search all of this? Why are we just finding out about it all now?
I'm going to be really careful not to characterize what the Justice Department is doing in their investigation. Probably more appropriate for a question like that to be asked of the Justice Department. So I would point you to them.
All right. So nothing on that one either. The next question is a follow-up. What is the absolute total number of documents that we're talking about here that might come up?
What is the total number of documents bearing classified markings that have been turned up as part of the investigation?
That's a good question. I think that's probably a more appropriate question for the Justice Department. I don't want to characterize sort of what they're reviewing and how they're going through all that.
Doesn't want to answer that question either. So we're going to go to NARA. We're going to hear about this NARA issue. Now, I think this is going to be a big issue. Comer is going to explain that they interviewed several people from the National Archives, the head librarians, and he's going to tell us that they said something that the media asks Ian Sams about, and Karine Jean-Pierre also gets asked about this, and she is not wanting to talk about it. So we're going to hear about all of that in a minute. First, before we get to James Comer, we know James Comer is a very vibrant man, a lot of energy. And so I was asking myself, how does he get so much done with all of those letters being written all over the place? And I don't know, but I would imagine he's probably somebody who eats his vegetables. And I want to tell you about our friends over at Field of Greens, because as we all know, it would be very nice to drop some of those leftover holiday and pandemic pounds. But how sick are you of those fad diets and those weight loss pills and all that garbage? You've been there, done that. They don't work. You know what does? Eating 5 healthy servings of fruit and vegetables every day. You do that and the weight would probably just fall right off. But, vegetables, not a fan. Who's got time to prepare all the fruits and all that stuff? So let's talk instead about Field of Greens. Field of Greens is a science-backed formula of specific fruits and vegetables that you won't find in any other product. Proper nutrition reboots your metabolism so you can burn calories faster and lose weight a healthier way. And Field of Greens is the only brand backed by a better health promise. Yes, you'll look and you'll feel healthier very fast. But the greater proof was going to come at the next checkup when your doctor says, you look outstanding. What have you been doing? Whatever you're doing, keep it up. Let's get you started. Go on over to fieldofgreens.com and you can save 15% off your very first order with code Robert. Fieldofgreens.com, code Robert, and you can save. Get your real organic superfood, Field of Greens. Start getting ultra energized and feel vibrant yourself, just like James Comer. Speaking of Comer, let's turn our attention over to him. James Comer is the head of the Oversight Committee, and he was on explaining what he did when he met with the National Archives. The National Archives, NARA, the head librarians, the people who are in charge of all of these records, the people who are inventorying what goes where and how it all works. Well, James Comer sent a letter over to the National Archives, and he said, all right, you people were going bananas when this involved the Trump documents. Why don't you give me some information about the Biden documents now? And they came in for an interview, and it was apparently transcribed, and we learned something interesting.
Peddling with our adversaries, we're using those classified documents inappropriately. If they had any access to the documents and if they viewed the documents, that's illegal. Certainly, if they were trying to peddle those documents for money, that's criminal. So it also jeopardizes our national security. That's why we need to get answers to this right now. That's why we brought in the National Archives today for our very first transcribed interview.
And can you tell us what happened? Did they shed any light on any of this?
Do tell.
Well, right before the National Archives came in, they handed us a letter from the Department of Justice informing them and us that the General Counsel for the National Archives wasn't allowed to say anything about the Biden documents.
What? Did you hear that? The DOJ sent a letter to the National Archives, and the National Archives showed up and they said, sorry, we can't talk about this. The Department of Justice said, no, sorry. That's from the House Oversight. The DOJ just issued a gag order, essentially, on the National Archives so that the House Oversight Committee can't do their job.
We went ahead and we had about a 3+ hour transcribed interview with the General Counsel. And what we learned was there is a double standard here with how Donald Trump was treated versus Joe Biden. And I'll give you an example, Sean. If you go on the National Archives website, there's pages and pages of press releases and information about the FBI's raid into Mar-a-Lago and Donald Trump's possession of classified documents. But there's nothing on the website about Joe Biden. There wasn't any press release or anything on the website about Joe Biden. So we asked the General Counsel, why were there no press releases sent on Joe Biden once it was determined that he had classified documents in his possession? And the counsel said that he did do press releases, but he was ordered and told they couldn't be published.
Whoa!
So we then asked who gave him the orders, and he said, I can't tell you that, but there are only two people that could have given him those orders, and that's either the Department of Justice with Merrick Garland or the White House with Joe Biden. So it shows right there that this Department of Justice and this White House is interfering with this and treating Donald Trump very differently than they're treating Joe Biden.
All right. So to summarize, this is pretty amazing. Okay. James Comer sent a demand to the National Archives, NARA, the head librarian of the whole country, and said, you come in here and talk to us. She said, we don't really want to do it. And he said, well, you better. And so they fight. All right, fine. Don't send us a subpoena. We'll come in and talk to you. When they showed up, they got a gag order from the DOJ, the Department of Justice, Merrick Garland, Biden's attorney general, sent a letter over to the National Archives and said, when you show up to Comer's office for this transcribed interview, you are not allowed to talk about this. This is our legal conclusion. The executive branch is raising its force field to stop them from communicating about any of these things. So they said, okay, so certain lines of questioning, they're just, I can't answer that on order of the DOJ. Biden's people are putting the force fields up to stop the National Archives from talking about it. Okay, that's point one. Point two is when they showed up there, Comer starts the interview and he asks him about this little double standard thing. He says, this is really weird. You have all of these press releases that you published about Trump, because Trump was coming out and he was saying, they're my documents and nobody has a right to them and I declassify them and they're personal. And they said, no, they're not personal records because of this. And they said, no, we're the head librarian and we say what works here. We're more powerful than you, Mr. President, and all that stuff. And the Democrats were saying, that's true, right? And all of these press releases, one after the other, NARA is defending itself. So why are they not also guiding America through this difficult question about what Joe Biden has done with his documents? Well, they wanted to, but the Biden people said, no, you can't do that. They confirmed that to James Comer in that interview. Can you tell me why you're not writing press releases for Biden? Well, we did, actually. We got drafts of them. The Biden people said we couldn't publish them.
Well, I want to hone in on that. So
yeah,
in the last 48 hours, the Department of this, that some of these the home entirely differently.
All right, let's hone in on Comer. Let's listen to Comer.
More about their documents. Are they allowed to talk about their documents? And the general counsel for the National Archives said he didn't have any problem with the White House being transparent about what's going on with their investigation. So it's not the National Archives. It's the Department of Justice. It's Merrick Garland's Department of Justice.
Wow.
And remember, Sean, we wouldn't even know about the fact that Joe Biden had classified documents in his possession were it not for a leak to CBS News. So someone leaked this out.
They didn't tell us anything.
We would never have heard it from this White House. They would have covered it up forever, like all the other cover-ups they're doing with every major part of our investigation into the Biden family influence peddling.
Now, here's the interesting interpret that's taken with
treating, again, former President Trump very differently than they're being treated themselves, is the fact that we requested the same type of information on Joe Biden that my predecessor, Democrat Chairwoman Maloney, requested on Donald Trump. National Archives gave them every bit of information she requested on Donald Trump, but they never gave me any information. And once again, the reasoning was the general counsel said he printed all the information, he answered all our questions, but he wasn't allowed to turn it over to us. So once again, the only people that could prohibit him from answering our request was either the Department of Justice or the White House.
Unbelievable, absolute corruption, total scammers in there in that DOJ. They are not disclosing Biden information about the same material that other Congress people, she's not in Congress anymore, Carolyn Maloney, I think she lost to the waddling Jerry Nadler, but she demanded answers about Trump, and NARA sent them all over to her. Here you go, here's a whole friggin' portfolio, and they gave it to her. Same materials that Comer wants, the Biden White House is using the DOJ to say no. This is a massive scandal. These people are so corrupt, and the double standards are naked and on display. You can see them right there for you because it literally is the same situation. It's nuts. Mr. Irresponsible Biden did the exact same thing that he was criticizing Trump for, and you can see the reactions are opposite, and America is noticing that. So we'll wrap up with, actually, here is Ian Sams. He gets asked about this. Comer made that statement, and it raised a lot of eyebrows, ours included. Sean Hannity's included as well. And so the press asked Ian Sams about that. Hey, Ian, you're the spokesman for the White House. Can you tell us, did you people at the DOJ, did you put the pressure down on the neck of NARA, the head librarians, to force them to not communicate?
Anyone at the White House at any point tell the National Archives in any form that they could not release a press release about the discovery of classified documents?
What's that in reference to?
There's reporting that came from the House Oversight Committee Chairman, James Comer, who says that in his conversations with the National Archives, they communicated that they were told, the archives was told it could not release a press release at whatever point it was about the discovery of classified documents. And anyone at the White House tell them not to do that?
Yeah, I don't know anything about that. If that's actually what he said, it's probably better to ask the archives if that's actually what was said and try to understand a little bit more what he meant.
Josh?
We just heard from Comer that the archives said that they are not allowed to talk about it, right? The DOJ said, you're kind of part of the executive branch, and we've done our analysis. I can't wait to see what that letter says. I can't wait for Comer to release that letter and say, what did the DOJ say? What is their posture on this? If it was good enough to disclose the records for Trump, why wasn't it good enough to disclose the records for Biden? Is it because he's a sitting president? Is that why? Isn't that more of a reason to disclose it? Because he can still exercise power. Trump is not in power anymore. Doesn't he have a massive conflict of interest by being the sitting president who actually runs the DOJ, right? Through Merrick Garland, his appointee. Massive conflict of interest. Everything should be Trump times 100 because Trump's just a private citizen. This is the sitting president. Absolutely amazing. Now, the media is not happy that they're not getting any answers. They continue on, and Ian Sams continues to bloviate. Here's another question from the media.
Simple, just to be very clear, has the FBI conducted any searches of any other locations associated with the president that you or the White House is aware of?
Look, I think we're providing information as this goes on and answering questions about the search activities as they've been happening. I don't want to speak too much to the DOJ's practices in an ongoing investigation. I can say, that we have cooperated fully. The president's personal attorneys have provided information to DOJ. We've addressed openly and directly the searches that were conducted first at the president's Wilmington residence and then today at the Rehoboth residence. You saw in the statement that was released by the president's personal attorney, for example, that no documents with classified markings were found in Rehoboth today. And so, we're going to continue to try to provide information as this investigation goes on and ensure that
no documents were found 3 months later.
You guys have the ability to share with the American people sort of the information that is important for them to see as the president's cooperating with this investigation. And so I want to be very careful to respect the integrity of that investigation, not speak too much to the Justice Department's decision making and their activities, but as it's appropriate, like we did today, if we have information to share about activities that have been conducted, we will do that.
They don't share anything. He says if more pops up and they got to tell us about it, they're going to share it. They didn't share it. We're going to hear from the media. They don't even believe the White House would have been transparent about this if they had not been caught by the media. So let's go through this one. One final clip. This is an amazing one. The media wants to know why Ian Sams and the White House counsel are not being open, honest, and transparent. And Ian says, what are you talking about? We've given you like 1,000 words about this.
You're disclosing this search, but you did not disclose that the FBI also searched the president's former private office here in Washington. Do the American people have a right to know about that?
Question is, do the American people have a right to know about all these ongoing searches that you don't tell us about? Here's what he says.
Yeah, I think we've been pretty transparent from the very beginning with providing information as it occurs throughout this process.
Really?
We have released probably thousands of words of statements from the president's personal attorney and the White House.
Do you hear that? Thousands of words of statements. Do you hear that? Thousands of words of statements. Did you see his little paragraph that he released? It's been like a couple paragraphs every now and then. Somebody should calculate and add up all those words. Do a word count. I think he's lying on his essay submission. I don't think he hit the 1,000-word threshold. I think he's a couple hundred words, maybe. But that is supposed to be good enough for you, America. Is that good enough for you? Like a couple thousand words about one of the biggest scandals and cover-ups in, Biden administration history for sure. Arguably bigger than that if he is covering up, something much more nefarious, which is yet to be seen. A couple thousand words. Isn't that nice? Here it is again.
Disclosed that the FBI also searched the president's former private office here in Washington. Do the American people have a right to know about that?
Yeah, I think we've been pretty transparent from the very beginning with providing information as it occurs throughout this process. You know, we have released probably thousands of words of statements from the president's personal attorney and the White House counsel's office about the process that has been undertaken here, that process that has been fully coordinated with the Justice Department as they conduct an ongoing investigation.
So they know when these searches are going on and they're not telling us about them, right? So he just kind of admitted that they are working in conjunction with them, hand in hand. Everything is going by their book, but they're just not telling us.
And we want to be very careful to be respectful of the integrity of that ongoing investigation. And
especially if being respectful of the integrity of that ongoing investigation means that we don't have to answer any questions to you. And if we can get away with it, you're not even going to know about this stuff. Okay. We're only hearing about the stuff that has popped up. The White House, up until this point, has not voluntarily offered us anything. Not one thing, from as far as I can tell. Everything else has been demanded from the media and something that you have to sort of reveal as part of the process when you get caught covering something up. So they're acting like this is all out of the goodness of their heart. They're being open, honest, and transparent. They're not answering any questions about it. The media agrees.
So I think that it's important to understand that as these things develop and as information develops throughout an investigation, we're trying to get you guys access to as much information as we can. And with regards to that specific question, I don't have anything to add for you right now. I think it's probably more appropriate that that question specifically about something that happened a few months ago be asked to the Justice Department.
Okay, again, no questions at all. So that was most of what the press conference sounded like. Very little new information. They are going out and telling us that they're being open, transparent, and answering questions. But as you saw, we went through, I don't know, what is that, 8 clips there? And not a single new bit of information came out, other than they're just continuing to work with the DOJ. They're not going to tell us anything more. We do know, not from the White House, but from Comer and the interview with the National Archives, that there may be another cover-up where they're trying to get the National Archives to shut their mouths. The media is asking about that as well. We go over to the White House. Now, right after Ian Sams did his thing outside, they turned over to Karine. Karine came out and got asked a bunch of questions. There's a bunch of stuff going on right now, debt ceiling and a bunch of stuff. We're focused only on the documents. And so one of the first questions came from this woman, and she asked a question about some other thing and then slipped in the documents question because she knows how Karine gets irritated with them. And so she says, how can you possibly expect the American people to consider this to be a transparent display or just transparent conversation with the American people when you are not telling us about this stuff and we all wake up and then poof, there's another search or there's another document or there's some other scandal going on? Help us out, Karine.
And on documents, Ian addressed a version of this at the Sticks a little bit ago, but I'm wondering how the White House can claim that they are being transparent when the FBI search of the Penn Biden Center that happened months ago was not proactively disclosed to the public, and what should the public take away from the fact that you are keeping information like this from the public?
Look, I'm going to be very prudent from here. I'm going to be very consistent from here.
Right.
I'm just not going to comment anything that is related to what is currently happening. This is a legal process. As you just mentioned, my colleague was right outside these doors answering many of your questions. He has done that these past couple of weeks, I believe 4 weeks now, and he'll continue to do that. Anything that is specific to this particular process, I would refer you to the Department of Justice and also, again, my colleagues at the White House counsel's office.
Just following up on that, I understand you're not going to discuss the details or anything, but just, is there a reason that 2 of the searches were disclosed and not the search?
I interrupt this broadcast to introduce Leaf Blower Guy. Can you hear him? Can you hear him? Shout out to Leaf Blower Guy. Love it when he comes right now. Perfect. We love Leaf Blower Guy. We love you. Shout out from Watching the Watchers. We love Leaf Blower Guy on this show. He's working hard. Shout out to Leaf Blower Guy. Here he is. He's right outside. All right. We love Leaf Blower Guy. He's our favorite. You know, he surprises us from time to time. He just comes out and he's just, you know, we're here.
Search of the Penn Biden Center. You mentioned this is a legal process. Is there a legal reason why you're disclosing only 2 and not what we know as a third search?
I'm going to refer you to the White House counsel's office.
Okay, then another question on the meeting today with Speaker McCarthy.
All right, so Karine Jean-Pierre is fielding questions from the media, not answering any of them, continuing to defer everything over to the White House counsel and the DOJ, but the media doesn't relent. They've got more questions, and we're going to get over to them. And yes, shout out to Leaf Blower Guy. He's out there doing a tremendous job. Leaves are a pain in the butt. They're floating all over the place, and so we're grateful for all of our leaf blowing friends out there. All right, and so let's continue on. Now, another question came in. Of course, we just heard that Ian Sams was giving press briefings out on the White House lawn in the middle of the gardens, essentially. Well, why not bring those press briefings in the White House? Like Karine has a podium here. Karine, you've got a podium. It's nice, air conditioned. It's warm in here. We're all got chairs. We're all seated. We can hear each other. There's cameras. Why can't Ian Sams just come up to the podium and talk to us here, Karine?
Thank you, Karine. Just two quick, how we all do our jobs around here questions, and then one or two on the president. Why not have Ian brief in here?
Well, Ian was outside and took your questions.
But why not in here like other government officials?
Again, Ian was outside and took your question, and he's been doing that for the last 4 weeks.
Would the White House have revealed today's search if pool cameras hadn't caught the investigators arriving on scene?
Busted.
Again, this is a question for the White House counsel's office. I would refer you to them.
Great question. Did you hear that question? Would the White House, this gentleman here, would the White House have released that statement from Bob Bauer, the lawyer? Would Ian Sams have delivered a statement had the media not busted you guys? Had they not been sitting outside Rehoboth and watched the FBI agents show up? Would you have been honest with us, Karine?
And then one or two on the president. Why not have Ian brief in here?
Well, Ian was outside and took your questions.
But why not in here like other government officials?
Again, Ian was outside and took your question, and he's been doing that for the last 4 weeks.
Would the White House have revealed today's search if pool cameras hadn't caught the investigators arriving on scene?
Again, this is a question for the White House counsel's office. I would refer you to them.
No, they wouldn't have told us because they haven't told us anything. All they do is they refer over to the DOJ and they say, well, we can't possibly, interfere with an ongoing investigation over there. And we don't want to jeopardize what they're working on. And we want to be respectful, is what Ian Sams said, like a broken record. They conveniently have a bunch of other agencies to point to defer their questions to. But they have not openly revealed new information to us. They've been trying to cover this puppy up. And so another question came in about that NARA issue. Of course, James Comer told us that NARA said that they wanted to talk all about this, but they were silenced from the DOJ. NARA got a letter from the DOJ that said, shut your mouths when you're talking to James Comer. He's going to ask you hard questions that are very, very bad for us, and we don't want you to answer them. So the question for Karine in the White House is, did you people direct NARA to be silenced and not respond to questions from legitimate House oversight?
I asked this of Ian Sams outside when he took our questions earlier. I want to ask of you, though, because I think it is for the wider White House, not just the special counsel's office, which is, did anyone at the White House tell the National Archives at any point not to issue a press release about the discovery of classified documents?
I would really refer you to the White House counsel's office, who has been running this process, and refer you to them.
Even if it's something that's not just in their purview, it would be wider within the entire White House?
Because this is, when it relates to the DOJ, when it relates to special counsel, this is something that's been under their purview, so I would refer you to them.
Absolutely nuts. So is it a policy now of the White House? Did the White House change its policy? Did NARA change its policy? Because you released all the Trump materials, but now you're not releasing the Biden materials. So that is an official White House policy change. Isn't that what you're supposed to be there to answer questions about, Karine? But she doesn't. Our last question comes from this woman, and she asks a question a little bit differently, but I think she still gets shut down. She says, look, you are telling us you're being transparent. We don't think you are. You say that you'll tell us about things when they are appropriate to tell us about. Sort of, you're putting us on a need-to-know basis. You say we don't need to know. We think we do, but okay. Let's just set that standard. Okay. Will you, Karine, promise that you will tell us about important things when they pop up, right? We think that transparency is a much lower bar. We want to know a lot more. You think that transparency means that you can tell us only about very certain specific things. We disagree on that. However, according to your standard of what transparency is, are you going to tell us things?
I have one quick one on documents that went to student loans. Understanding that you can't tell us why the FBI search at the Biden Center wasn't disclosed previously, and that Ian Sams has referred to questions about the National Archives possibly being blocked from sending a press release to DOJ. Understanding you can't talk about any of that. Can you assure us that the White House has been and continues to be as transparent as possible, meaning that where there haven't been disclosures, something has prevented that?
Another question. If you didn't tell us about something, there must be good reason as to why. Now look at this guy looking directly at the camera, giving us the he knows what Karine's going to say here.
What I can say is what the president has said many times, and you've seen it in our statements, is that we are cooperating fully. The president and his team is cooperating fully, and we will continue to do that. And I'll just leave it there.
On student loans.
Nothing there. Okay, so again, they're not going to be telling us if they're transparent or not, or what the situation is. So we get very little new information from Karine. We can speculate that they would not have released any of this information if the media did not catch them red-handed. Debatable point. But we want to know what the White House is doing in order to quell Americans' concerns about this, confidential classified materials document problem that is ongoing. And somebody who is in charge of some very important issues in this country is our vice president. Very competent leader. She is going to be sharing with us an explanation of how America is going to reach the stars. And this clip comes from, my understanding is, a speech delivering honors to the actual astronauts who are in the audience. This is not in front of a kindergarten classroom. Let's see what Kamala has to say to reassure us all that our future is bright.
Which brings me to May 30th, 2020.
Tell us, Cami.
Bob and Doug returned to the Kennedy Space Center.
Mm-hmm.
They suited up.
Mm-hmm.
They waved to their families.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And they rode an elevator up nearly 20 stories.
20 stories?
They strapped in to their seats and waited as the tanks beneath them filled with tens of thousands of gallons of fuel.
Whoa!
And then they launched. Yeah, they did.
Yeah. They launched. Where'd they go, into outer space? Wow, that's our vice president. Oh my gosh. There are adults in that room. Adults. That's not a first grade classroom, my friends. What is this? What is she doing? What is happening? I don't even know. All right, so that's the level of competence that we have from the White House. Of course, we will continue to cover the document saga. Does Kamala have any classified documents in her closets, or are they just coloring books and crayons? I have no idea, but we're going to continue to cover it. We appreciate you joining us as we do. Thank you for hitting the subscribe button and liking this video wherever it is you are watching it. We will continue to cover. All right, and so let's turn our attention now over to Congress, because they are going hard at the pandemic, and I am very excited to see what they are able to uncover and reveal for us. The Oversight Committee, the Republicans now leading, launched their first committee hearing. We're going to go through it in detail because they are battling back against pandemic spending and a lot of the waste and fraud that came out. Something like, $500 billion was wasted and stolen out of the American taxpayers' pocketbook. And so very interesting now. We know that there is a new GOP leadership structure in the House of Representatives. We're going to take several clips from Boebert, Biggs, Lisa McClain, and Marjorie Taylor Greene, who all delivered about 2 to 5 minute statements battling back against all of this wasteful spending. Some very nice statements and some new facts about the scope of this waste. But we're going to start with James Comer, who's going to open up the ceremony for us and explain who we're going to hear from. I want to give you a quick preview. Coming up, we've got Michael Horowitz. He is the chairperson for the Pandemic Response Accountability Committee. This is a government bureaucracy that is going to make sure that the response is accountable, I suppose. Michael Horowitz, you may recognize his name. He is the Inspector General. We've read many sort of statements from him. He's been in Washington a long time. Then we'll go over from the Accountability Committee over to the Comptroller. His name is Gene Dodoro. He is the Comptroller for the GAO. You've probably heard of the U.S. Government Accountability Office, talking about spending and waste. And then we'll go over to the Secret Service. This guy's name is David Smith. He's the Assistant Director for the United States Secret Service. And if you're familiar with the Secret Service, one of the things that's under their jurisdiction is fraud and counterfeiting and all of that stuff. So they all get hauled in front of Congress, and it's the first Oversight Committee hearing. We're very excited to see what James Comer has in store for us. And look at him with this gavel. Doesn't that look beautiful? Here, enjoy this. Oh, yeah. Did you hear that? Let's start that one more time. Oh, beautiful. Absolutely outstanding. Hit it one more time. Hit it, James. Ah, yes. It's in order.
We'll call
the Oversight Committee is in the House.
The first hearing of the 118th Congress for the House Committee on Oversight and Accountability. Welcome. As chairman, I intend to focus this committee's attention and resources on its core mission to ensure our government is working for the American people in an efficient manner. Agencies guard taxpayer funds from fraudsters and ineligible participants, and political leadership be held accountable for bad consequences of their policies. Last Congress, Democrats strayed far from this mission. The Biden administration faced little to no scrutiny under unchecked, one-party Democrat rule in Washington. This committee conducted almost no oversight of federal government agencies, programs, or policies. The nonpartisan Lugar Center gave Democrats an F in oversight last Congress. Instead, this committee spent its time and resources demonizing America's oil and gas industry, investigating an NFL football team, and examining pet, flea, and tick collars.
Pet, flea, and tick collars. That's what the last Congress did. We love our feline friends, our furry friends.
American people have suffered from the lack of oversight and accountability. Crises have continued and worsened. Our nation is facing the worst border crisis in American history. Fentanyl, which is coming across the southern border, is the leading cause of death for many Americans. Americans are facing high energy prices resulting from policies aimed at diminishing domestic energy production. And the American people have struggled with consequences of prolonged COVID closures and lockdowns, inflation, and shortages of labor and goods. That's why this first hearing is so important. Today's hearing is a first step in examining the massive waste, fraud, and abuse in COVID relief programs. In March of 2020, the United States struggled to respond to growing threats presented by COVID-19. With the economy on the brink of collapse, Congress passed a series of bills intended to both fund the public health response and keep the economy afloat. The largest of these measures was the bipartisan CARES Act.
How much?
It created programs like the Paycheck Protection Program, which saved jobs at small businesses across the country.
After they locked us all down.
It rolled out pandemic unemployment insurance to help American workers who were victims of business closures and spiking unemployment. These programs brought relief to many Americans. But with massive government spending comes opportunity for waste, fraud, and abuse.
You're kidding me.
Unfortunately, Democrats conducted little oversight
Say it isn't
of
so.
the over $2 trillion spent under the CARES Act. They did the exact opposite.
Now, we're going to hear different numbers of totals here, right? So he said $2 trillion under the CARES Act. We're going to hear from Marjorie Taylor Greene. She said something like $5 trillion, right? And then you take a look at that total bill and you say what percentage of that was stolen and fraudulent. Even a small percentage of $5 trillion is a lot.
Spent another $2 trillion, but this time with absolutely no protections or guardrails to prevent waste. And worse, they spent this money when there was no sign that it was actually needed. This out-of-control spending led to 40-year high inflation, kept people out of work longer, and harmed our economy. During the markup of this legislation, many of us warned that without oversight mechanisms in place, Taxpayer dollars were at risk of being misused or lost to fraud, waste, or abuse. Republican amendments would have put strings attached on those dollars. They would have allowed for oversight. But Democrats voted down every single amendment we offered.
Wow. Right. And, you know, this is sort of hard to measure and hard to gauge, because if you remember back during the pandemic, it was like a free-for-all. Everybody was just doing whatever they wanted, essentially, in government. Emergency, emergency, emergency. We're all going to die. Everybody just, 15 days? Sure. Need another 2 weeks? Sure. Another 2 months? Sure. Another $1 trillion? No problem. Whatever you need, right? Everybody was getting in. It was very good. The feeding frenzy was going on hard. Everybody knew, oh man, this is a major crisis, and we are going to get fat as we possibly can while we're locking everybody down. It was a very disgusting thing. We were outraged about it. But what Comer is saying is, look, you know, a lot of this, yeah, happened during the Trump administration and back during 2020 when the pandemic really went into full effect. But the Republicans during that time were trying to make amendments so that any of this spending could be better managed. There was better oversight over all of it. And those amendments were rejected, which now led to just basically a spigot of money being turned on that everybody can go get fat off of.
And what happens if there's no oversight? Nothing good. We've seen reports that between $163 to $400 billion in unemployment insurance benefits were paid out improperly. We've seen reports that between $76 to more than $100 billion in Paycheck Protection Program and economic injury and disaster loan programs were lost to improper payments.
$100 billion.
We've seen reports that $266 billion in improper payments were made by Medicaid during the pandemic. That's why we're having our first hearing of the new Congress on waste, fraud, and abuse in pandemic spending programs. We will hold many more of these hearings on this important issue. We owe it to the American people to get...
Think about the market cap of that. Pick a $256 billion company. Pick one. You know, there's not many of them. And that whole thing was just stolen, just gone.
To the bottom of the greatest theft of American taxpayer dollars in history.
Insane.
We must identify where this money went, how much ended up in the hands of fraudsters or ineligible participants, and what should be done to ensure that it never happens again. This committee will evaluate the hundreds of billions of dollars in grants and loans doled out for nearly every agency in the federal government to ensure those funds were appropriately used to respond to the pandemic and not wasted on ineligible payees or unrelated matters. We will investigate the $189 billion in elementary and secondary school emergency relief funds, money meant to help reopen schools and address learning loss. Instead, these funds were often used on unrelated expenditures and even to push divisive ideologies onto our students. We will work to ensure that the watchdogs in our offices of inspectors general and our law enforcement officers, agents, and prosecutors have the tools they need to track down fraudsters and recover illegally obtained COVID-19 taxpayer funds. This committee has, for too long, stood on the sidelines while taxpayer dollars were wasted by bureaucrats whose only priority is getting money out the door. Today, we will hear from Inspector General Michael Horowitz.
Got him.
GAO's Comptroller General Jean Dodoro, and Assistant Director David Smith with the Office of Investigations at the Secret Service.
Nice.
Thank you all for being here to testify about your efforts to conduct oversight of pandemic funding. I now yield to Ranking Member Raskin for his opening statement.
All right. And so that is Jamie Raskin. Of course, we learned that he's got cancer now, so we're being extra nice to Jamie Raskin where appropriate. And so that's why he's wearing a mask, and that's why he is in a hat, if you're wondering about that. Yesterday, he was in a bandana type of a thing. So that is the opening. First ever Oversight Committee from our friend James Comer. And you could hear, right, what he said. We're going to go in hard. We're going to ask questions, hard questions from Horowitz, Dodoro, and David Smith. And that's exactly what happened. We've got Boebert, Biggs, and others who are all sort of weighing in. And we'll go through each of those. But I want to pause and say hello to our friend Viva, who is in the house. Viva Fry is on YouTube, of course. And we miss our friend Viva. We haven't had a good conversation in a while, but we'll have to reconnect and do that very soon. But Viva is in the house, and if you're not already subscribed to his channel, he's on Rumble, he's on YouTube, right next door on YouTube, right next door on Rumble, and they're also at vivabarneslaw.locals.com, which is in the chat. Vientikis just dropped it in the chat. We love Viva when Viva swings by. He said he's doing some video editing and hanging out, joining us in the chat. We're glad you're here, Viva. So ultra mega love for Viva. And the chat is expressing love. Of course, we love Viva. Awesome. And Viva, yeah, we love Viva. So we're going to have to connect with Viva. It's been way too long on that. And thank you, VNTKIS, for plugging all the Viva and Barnes stuff. Yeah. Okay, it's awesome. Well, thanks for swinging by, Viva. All right, so as you can see, there's going to be a bunch of other reaction to this from other Congress people. They've got their time and they want to ask questions. And so Lauren Boebert is going to get us started. And she, you know, a lot of the times there are some questions that come out. Oftentimes these are just opportunities for the Congress people to make their speeches and make their statements. And so I think Lauren's is more of a statement. Let's listen in and see what she says.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you so much to our witnesses who are here today. I appreciate your time and your willingness to be here and speak with us and answer these very important questions. Now, I'm going to get right to it. Members of Congress have been told that American taxpayers were defrauded a possible $560 billion as a result of the federal government's negligence in carrying out these federal COVID relief funding programs. And I'm going to start with a rhetorical question here. But does anyone know of an organization in America or around the world, public or private, that has been scammed out of $560 billion? And so
how much was FTX?
Simply, is that okay? I certainly can't think of one, and I don't think that it's okay either. So after what was the largest fleecing in American history, possibly world history, can any one of the witnesses today give me the name of one administrator, one director, a supervisor that was fired, demoted, or put on leave because they failed to keep hundreds of billions of dollars from being stolen from the American taxpayers? And I'll yield very quickly to each of our witnesses for a simple yes or no.
Okay, so real quick on this, I was looking this up. Here, Sam Bankman-Fried, right? I wanted to know what the total was. $8 billion in customer money, right? And you could say, okay, well, if that was all leveraged out and everything, you know, maybe it goes up to like $40 billion, right? Maybe the whole ecosystem was like $40 billion, give or take, if it's all, you know, magnified and leveraged lending and all this stuff. So it's a big number for FTX, and that was a catastrophe for that. What about $500 billion? Has that ever been stolen? No. The rhetorical question, no questions on that one. But have you people in charge, have you demoted anybody in your work because they did a bad job on fraud?
I'll start with you, Director Smith.
No, ma'am, that's not my focus.
Thank you.
I don't demote anybody.
I don't know if as I sit here, I could ask the fellow IGs to see if they know of any
demotions,
actions that have been taken from an administrative side.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So nobody's been fired.
Yeah, offhand.
They don't do that stuff, right?
I didn't think so. And that's pretty insane. $560 billion we're projecting. And we have hundreds of billions of dollars lost, causing massive inflation. 70% of the money, according to the CEO of LexisNexis Risk Solutions, ended up lining the pockets of crime syndicates in countries like China, Nigeria, Russia, and not a single person in charge of distributing that money has been held accountable. So here's how badly the—
So think about the size of this again. Now, I'm having a hard time making these numbers make sense. All right, so they're talking about $500 billion gone. That's the net income for like 5 years of Apple. Okay, that's like a year and a half of all of Apple's revenue, which is one of the biggest companies in the whole world, right? If not the biggest by market cap, a $2.65 trillion company, which is Apple. So it would be, or Saudi Aramco, right? The total revenue is $346 billion. One of the biggest companies in the whole stinking world, including Microsoft, Alphabet, right? We're talking about two Googles worth of revenue stolen. Gone. Two full Googles just gone. You know, think about the size of that.
American taxpayer was conned. The United States federal government has reportedly been defrauded of more money in the last 2 years than the entire 2022 tax revenue of England, Italy, Mexico, Ireland, Greece, Israel, Canada, Poland, and Brazil combined. The American taxpayers have one question. How the heck were these bureaucrats so dang incompetent that they were being scammed out of $35 million every hour for nearly 2 years. Absolutely insane. And what's equally concerning is the fact that for years,
$35 million
Congress
an hour?
has known the size and scope of which the American taxpayer was defrauded, yet this committee refused to act until now that Republicans hold the gavel. And in a desperate attempt to protect the Bidens, the big tech industry, the Democrat Party, the mainstream media has tried to discredit this committee before our work has even begun. There should be nothing more bipartisan than ensuring American tax dollars aren't stolen by fraudsters. But sadly, it's taken a Republican-controlled Oversight and Accountability Committee to be willing to get to work on it. So here we are, the American people had their businesses shut down, they lost their jobs, their livelihoods, their life's work because of government mandates and shutdowns. And that same government spent trillions of dollars, lost hundreds of billions, and the result is skyrocketing inflation and interest rates for the American people. And our role is to ensure that we find out how this happened and make sure that it never happens again and hold those that stole money from the American people accountable.
Right on.
And Chair Horowitz, I would like to ask you, under the Biden administration, we have seen the DOJ wage a full-out attack against the American people, from accusing parents concerned about their children's education of being domestic terrorists, to raiding the homes of pro-life activists, to pressuring private companies to censor conservatives. As Republicans have continued to mention throughout this hearing, there's a clear difference between people who were issued improper payments versus fraudsters who have stolen hundreds of billions of dollars collectively from the American taxpayer with malicious intent. Now, Chair Horowitz, what is the Department of Justice doing to ensure that the federal government is targeting criminals and those who knowingly took millions of dollars from the federal government to fund criminal gangs in Russia, China, and Nigeria?
So we've worked with the department, inspectors general and the PRAC have worked with the Justice Department on these investigative matters. They've set up a fraud task force. We're a member of it with the Secret Service. We've worked closely with law enforcement partners across the federal government. It's going to take a substantial amount of time, effort, and resources because there are so many cases. We have that partnership working right now. We're going to continue to refer cases to them. And they're going to have to make assessments on which cases to bring criminally. We're also working with them on the improper payment side with the civil lawyers as well, because, again, we want to get the money back for the taxpayers.
Yes.
So they're going to go try to claw that money back. And here we're going to hear from him again. I think we have a clip of him, but he says, we're basically going to need about 10 years to go get all of this stuff. It's going to be a long time to go claw all this back. That is a ton of money, okay? 2 full Googles, not just profit, revenue for 2 full years. Think about how that, think about that size, the scope. They're going to have to get all of that back. So we turn our attention now over to Andy Biggs. Andy Biggs from Arizona is going to be asking questions of these government representatives, demanding to know more about where all the money went.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thanks for all of you. I'm sorry I've been in and out doing multiple hearings as we do. It's good to see you again, Mr. Horowitz. Mr. Dodoro, it's good to see you, and welcome to Mr. Smith. So I guess I'm going to try to broad shoot this thing here. Is there any money not expended in any of the COVID relief packages that you're aware of?
Any leftover money?
There's about, as of November 2022,
that's on their end, not ours.
About 157 billion unobligated funds.
157.
Okay, unencumbered, unobligated, unspent.
Right.
Okay, great. Thank you.
157 billion just in a fund somewhere, some government fund. That's how insane our government was. They just were passing money like a bunch of drunken lunatics.
And what is the total amount that you estimate was spent through either fraud, improper payments, or waste in any of those programs? Go ahead, Mr. Horowitz.
So, Congressman, it's even at this point too early to give any estimate that's reasonable. What I've said before, and I'll say again, it's clearly in the tens of billions of dollars. It wouldn't surprise me if it exceeds ultimately more than $100 billion.
Wow.
But we have so much work to do. It's why Congress extended the statute of limitations last year to 10 years. We're in year 3. And that's why
There
we
it
need
is.
that extension on the unemployment insurance side as
10
well.
years to
So
go
we're
dig
going to be
all this
counting
out.
and figuring this out for years to come. We're going to go after every penny we can. We're going to use every tool you give us, but it's going to take time, and we're not there yet.
Yes, so, and Mr. Smith, I read that you had returned through an analysis of, I think, 30,000 financial institutions, something about $3 billion to unemployment insurance benefits. Is that correct?
Mr. Smith is from the Secret Service.
Yes, sir. And then, I want to get to this because I think this is interesting. During the last round of questioning, the assertion was made that there was $653 billion overall in unemployment insurance that was disseminated through those programs, and that the estimate was somewhere below 25% was improper payments, fraud, or whatever. So if that's the case, though, we're talking, I mean, is that accurate? Is that, first of all, I want to just make sure I don't want to be misstating something. Is that's what I understood the testimony to be?
Yeah. The Department of Labor estimated for 2021 improper payments of $78 billion, which is about an 18.9% rate.
Billions.
And in 2022, it estimated 18.9 billion. That's a 22% improper payment rate. And so those are the estimates of the Department of Labor. Now, it's mostly for, those estimates are for the regular unemployment benefits. It's not for the Pandemic Unemployment Insurance Fund. So those aren't complete estimates for all the federal spending that was made during the period of time.
Okay.
Labor Department is now trying to figure out the Pandemic Unemployment Insurance Program. That's the one that went to people who were self-employed or working part-time, or, you know, that was the new program that was created. The other federal programs extended the benefits or added to the benefit during that period of time. Those estimates are covered, and those programs are covered by the estimates, but not the other one, the new one.
So we're talking about what buckets of fraud are still out there. Do we have it all accounted for? Do we have any idea what the total estimates are? And he's saying, well, sort of. Some of it is in this bucket. Some of it's in that bucket. He's like, all right, well, it's hard to keep track of all these. Hopefully somebody has a spreadsheet somewhere.
Doggone, I'm more confused now than ever. But I'm just...
See?
Yeah. Well, I just want to be clear on exactly what's happening.
No, I appreciate that. And,
right.
and as we go forward, maybe we could get together and just kind of suss out a little bit, you know, what that range might look like in totality versus...
Yeah, now what we've done is we've estimated on the unemployment insurance area, if you take the fraud rate and extrapolate it, that the low end of the estimate is greater than 60 billion.
Yeah, I saw that.
Right, and now we're working to try to figure out an estimate. Again, you know, no one that will know. I agree with Michael until all these investigations are underway.
Crazy.
As I mentioned, the Labor Department IG is opening up 100 new investigations every week, and the PPV program has over 500 investigations underway. So there'll be investigations into fraud on this for a period of time. But we're trying to give a sense of what we think the magnitude would be.
Well, I look forward to...
Yeah, and to go claw all that back, right, to go get that money back, that's 2 full Googles of money.
Continued discussion with you gentlemen. And I
a
just
lot
have
of prosecutions.
Mr. Chairman, my colleague from New York earlier mentioned fraud occurring within the unemployment insurance program in my home state of Arizona. What she did not mention is that Arizona actually identified the problem, partnered with a private sector company, and implemented an identity verification system, because it's kind of getting at what you're talking about there, that a Biden administration official at Treasury called, quote, kind of a silver bullet, close quote, and that, quote, almost immediately the fraud ring saw the game was up, close quote, once the tools were rolled out. And you had a 99% reduction in fraud when we implemented those measures in my state. So I'd love to take a closer look at Arizona's response, how it worked, why it worked.
All right, so talking about getting rid of some fraud. Now, that is a lot of money, and, you know, how much of that are they actually going to claw back? We'll have to wait and see. And how much of that are they going to be able to actually identify, right? How accurate will they be in their estimates? Who knows? All right, this is another clip. This woman is speaking. She's sitting next to Lauren. I don't know.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And thank you all for being here today.
Lisa McLean is her name.
A little bit of background is I come from the financial services background.
All right, great.
And I really want to focus on the waste, the fraud, and abuse, and really to represent the American people. In my background, if I were to defraud a client, probably two things would happen.
What?
One, I'd have to pay the money back.
Yeah, that's true. Restitution.
And two, I'd probably do a little time for that.
Fraud, jail.
And rightly so. So I want to really focus on what are the consequences and what are the penalties, and then what is the relationship, because if I understand it correctly, it's your job, Mr. Smith, to kind of make a preliminary case and then hand it over to the DOJ. Am I directionally correct on my understanding?
And refer for charges.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
So yeah, he's going to go as the Secret Service, right? These are kind of law enforcement investigatory individuals, or they're kind of heading up independent assessment teams, and then they'll make an actual referral over to the DOJ. So they were asking Mr. Smith, "You're going to investigate and then refer to the DOJ." He says yes.
So in your testimony, you mentioned that the department has recovered over $1 billion, which I think is a good start.
Nice.
However, we still have $500 billion in potential fraud out there that we've just
got to get going.
Who knows? There might be more.
One bit. You got to start with one.
So
but,
I'm curious as how many
more.
pandemic fraud cases your office has actually referred to the DOJ.
Okay, Code. Now you can then say, all right, well, we can work this backwards. And we've done this a lot here on this show, especially with the January 6 cases, right? They tell us this is the crime of the century, insurrection. There were, thousands and blah, blah, blah. But okay, you can say, okay, look, there's 500 billion out there. What was the average theft? I'm sure you could quantify that. All right, if the average theft is $1 million or $2 million or whatever the numbers are of the funds, okay, you divide, 500 billion by 2 million, which is the average theft, and you say, okay, whatever that number is, it's going to be a pretty big number. You're going to need that many prosecutions in order to go and collect that 500 billion. And so how many prosecutions have you started versus how many do you think you're going to need to get in order to close that gap? Because we're at 1 billion now. We want to get to 500 billion. So let's start now. How many have you referred over to the DOJ right now?
Do you know that?
So to give you some background, we've opened over 5,000 cases since March of 2020. We obviously follow the evidence, and once we feel like there's once we feel like there's investigative merit, we take those cases to the Department of Justice, U.S. Attorney's offices, and those U.S. Attorney's offices look at those cases and the prosecutorial merit of those, along with other federal law enforcement entities, because it's not just the Secret Service, but other federal law enforcement entities who are bringing pandemic-related cases as well. So they have to deconflict.
Okay, so he said they opened 5,000 cases, right? And let's just do some quick math, some just, back of the napkin math on this. And you can see here, we've got the calculator, which says, okay, if we divide $550 billion by, let's say the average stolen amount. So we have 550 billion dollars stolen. Let's say the average value of the theft was 5 million, which I think is very high. Okay, personally, I think it's probably a lot less than that. I think probably most of the fraud was probably in the, sub-million range, honestly. A couple 100,000 here and there. Everybody's just sort of fudging the numbers. Even if you said the average theft was 5 million, it would still take you 110,000 cases in order to basically claw all of that back. Okay, so 110,000 cases, and that is being extremely generous. Like I said, that number is probably, I don't know, a factor of 10 bigger than that. It's probably like 1 million cases, to be honest with you, because it's probably closer to $500,000 is the actual stolen amount, not 5 million, which would actually, basically add a zero to that. So it would be a massive number. So right now they're at 5,000 of about maybe 110,000 or maybe even 1 million cases, just to put the numbers in context.
And prioritize.
So let's stick with that theme, because I'm trying to get some answers.
Priorities, yeah.
So you have over 5,000 cases. How many of those have you referred to the DOJ?
Investigations, 5,000.
When we
Give or
open
take.
when we open a case, once we feel like there's enough evidence to move forward from a prosecutorial judicial standpoint, we present that case to the U.S. Attorney's Office. I don't have the breakdown of how many were presented yet. I can get that number back to you, though.
If you could, directionally, do you have an idea?
Hundreds, thousands?
When we open the case, the
Is it a
actual-
90% accept rate? Is it a 20%?
Well, accept rate is actually different than presentation rate.
Okay, we want to know how many get charged. Okay, how many of your recommendations get charged? We don't need the history lesson.
Open a case, the intent is to eventually present it to the U.S. Attorney's Office.
Right. So I'm trying to make the correlation to you commit a crime, there is a consequence. And what I'm trying to do for the American people to help justify for them their tax dollars being misused.
Going to need to really justify it a lot.
Basis, and I appreciate and I
Thanks
applaud
for
your
trying,
efforts.
McLean.
I'm trying to connect the dots on what is the number. Directionally, you have no idea. Is it? Does the DOJ accept most of the cases? Are most of the cases that you find accepted?
Let me give you an analogy on this. We can use DUIs as a very good example. Every time an officer stops somebody for a DUI, right, they do an investigation and they decide there's enough evidence to charge them with a crime. And sometimes what will happen is a person's blood alcohol level will not be known. And so the police officer won't have enough information to charge them with a DUI right there on the spot. So they'll take the blood, they'll send the blood out to the crime lab. The blood will come back. They'll say, oh, over the limit, and then we'll charge you with the crime after the fact. And that will all be delivered to the prosecutor's office, okay? You have a cop who writes the police report. The prosecutor charges the crime. If the police officer submits 10 DUI police reports and 10 DUI investigations over to the prosecutor's office, right, just reports. I saw this, I tested the blood, I pulled them over for this reason, blah, blah, blah. Send it over. How many of those are likely to get charged? If they file 10, how many are likely to get charged? Take a guess. 10, all 10 of them, okay? They charge them very regularly. It's like a very, it's almost never they decide we're not going to charge a DUI. It's big money for all the states. So in this situation, it's the same analogy. She's asking Secret Service, how many police reports did you draft? And how many of those reports actually got charged? Can you tell us? Is it like 10 out of 10? Is it 50%? Is it 1 out of 10? You should absolutely know that number. Absolutely.
I mentioned in a previous response, so as a federal law enforcement entity, we are, by nature, trying to go after the most egregious actors.
Sure.
That's why we train state and locals at our
What's the
Computer
number?
Forensics Institute down in Alabama to focus on a local level. But we're confident in our colleagues at the DOJ. They take as many cases as they can.
So with all due respect, you may be confident, but I don't know if the American people are confident with their tax dollars.
And how many numbers?
And I don't mean any disrespect, but that's why I'm trying to ask these numbers, is to get some answers for the American people. Let me
How many of your police reports are turning into criminal charges? Can you tell us?
rephrase it. How many of these cases are currently being prosecuted by the DOJ? Do you know that?
Come on.
I don't know that overall number for the Department of Justice.
Come
I
on.
do know that we've made over nearly 500 arrests since the beginning of the pandemic.
Okay, so that's a factor of 10. 5,000 presentations, he said, open police reports, 500 arrests. Okay, so we're getting pretty far away from that $110,000 number that 110,000 case number that we need.
Made 500 arrests. What has the result of that been? So I know you've recovered over $1 billion, right? Any jail time?
Yes, ma'am.
I'm sure there
Can
is,
you
yeah.
can you talk to that effect?
I haven't compiled the number of years or months total from the 500 arrests.
That is reasonable. That's a fair number. I wouldn't, I wouldn't expect him to know that either.
I haven't done that, ma'am.
Okay, because I do think at the end of the day, just like we treat our children, if there's a consequence to your action, Mr. Dodoro, you talked earlier about deterrence. Well, part of the deterrence process may be actually if we publicly show the American people that we are going after these criminals, these people that are stealing Americans' hard-earned monies, and not only are we recovering the money, but they're doing time and hard time, that might help on the deterrence. So when can I expect some results? or a report?
Ma'am, I'll give you a time frame on that when I get back to the team. But we've been pursuing results since the beginning of the pandemic.
But I'd like an accurate accounting of the results, if at all possible. And just to help on a positive note, saying, listen, we are good stewards of your money. We are trying to get your money back. So with that, I know I'm over time.
Right. The gentlelady's time's expired, but feel free to answer the question.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. So far, according to the data that we've analyzed from the Department of Justice, there have been over 1,000 people who have pled guilty or have been convicted.
Right.
There are over 600 charges pending against another 600 people.
All right, so we're still sub 1,000. And what would be very awesome to know about that data is what is the average amount of restitution? What was the average amount of funds that were stolen? And what are they clawing back? Because then you could basically have an average case value, right? You could know every single case would correlate with X amount of recoverable stolen COVID funds. And then you could chart that, right? Like a temperature gauge on, fundraising thing or whatever they do for those things. Okay, we got to get 550 billion back. Where are we at? All right, we're at 1.1 billion. All right, well, did you charge anybody today? Yeah. Okay, did he steal a couple billion? Right? How many people stole a couple $1 billion of COVID money? Not many. And how many people stole 100 million? Not many, because those are big numbers, and you'll be able to see all of those. So my guess is many of these cases are small amount cases, and it's going to be just a total free for all. Who knows how much they're going to claw back? Probably why they shouldn't have done all this garbage in the first place.
There have been at least 779 people who've been sentenced so far. This is on page 6 of my testimony.
That's less than the insurrection.
Testimony.
Actually, I don't know about that. I know that I don't know how many people have pled guilty on the J6 stuff yet. We're going to dig into that at some point too. But less than 1,000 people were charged, according to the DOJ's own website. So there's less COVID thieves than they've charged less COVID thieves than they've charged so-called insurrectionists at this point in time. Maybe they should have focused on the COVID thieves rather than trying to find Where's Waldo play that game with the FBI over the last 2 years.
Number of people have been. It's gone from 1 year of probation to 17 years in prison. So the sentences are significant. We have a number of individual examples sprinkled throughout our testimony. So that's a broad accounting at this point. Michael probably has even a more precise accounting.
Yeah, I was going to just build on that. There's the numbers. Agree with Mr. Dodoro. Everything is on our public website. We post all of the cases that we're, as an Inspector General community, involved in. I couldn't agree with you more. The public needs to know there's consequences. Crime doesn't pay. What we're going to do as inspectors.
It kind of does. There's $549 billion still outstanding. We'll see how much of that you get back.
Inspectors General, as long as that clock is running, and Congress last year extended it from 5 to 10 years in one group of cases. Hopefully we'll do it in others. We're going to keep going. It's going to go for 7 more years or more. But we're going to hold everybody who we can hold accountable. And as Inspectors General, we don't care about dollar thresholds. We're going to go after the smallest dollar to the biggest. Obviously, you prioritize. We have multi-year sentences to date for some people. No one should think they got to get out of jail free card. But one of the things that can help, because we're not only talking about fraud, we're talking about improper payments, right, and recovering money. And so that's where one of the things I mentioned earlier, the Program Fraud Civil Remedies Act, it is a administrative way we can get money back. It's not criminal, but the taxpayers know we're getting the money back.
Yeah, we'll see about that. I really doubt they claw any of it back because there's just too much of it out there. Okay, it's $550 billion. The DOJ is too busy focused on making sure that the grandma who was marching around the Capitol serves her time. What do they care about, the wholesale theft of this country?
Here we are in a...
Our final clip comes from Marjorie Taylor Greene, who is also there sharing her perspective on the COVID pandemic fraud.
That our government spent over $5 trillion in COVID relief funding and we can't find $560 billion, I believe,
Amazing.
of that money of the Americans' hard-earned taxpayer funding. We're also a nation at $34 trillion in debt, and we're on the verge of having to handle our debt ceiling, raise it once again. And here we are looking at waste, fraud, and abuse. And gentlemen, I thank you for coming and speaking to our committee on this issue. And I know it's been a long day for you. But I would like to ask some questions about the type of funding that has been used with COVID relief funds, and it's pretty shocking to me. You know, I read some examples. For example, Washington, D.C.'s Mayor Muriel Bowser plans to use $31.5 million in American Rescue Plan funds to transition homes to green energy over the next 5 years. As many
What does
small
that have to do with the
businesses were
pandemic
shut
at
down,
all?
children lost 2 years in education, child suicide rates went up, and it's hard to even imagine a child committing suicide. Many people died from COVID. Healthcare workers were fired from vaccine mandates. Many other people were fired because of vaccine mandates. And all the issues that have come out of COVID, I want to ask about how this money has been spent, because clearly there is a tremendous amount of waste, fraud, and abuse, and a lot of our hard-earned taxpayers' dollars spent on things that don't even make sense that they've been spent on. So, Mr. Dodoro, if you don't mind answering a few of my questions, can you tell me, as our comptroller of the United States, how much COVID cash was given to abortion?
I do not know that answer. I don't have that answer.
Oh, okay. So I can tell you Planned Parenthood clinics received $80 billion in COVID relief loans, which is hard to understand how that happened.
Did you say
Mr.
80
Dodoro, can you
billion?
Loans, $80 billion. Planned Parenthood clinics received $80 billion in COVID relief loans, which is hard to understand how that happened. Mr. Dodoro, can you tell me how much money COVID cash went towards diversity, equity, and inclusion or racism issues?
Again, we have not looked at that issue, so I don't know.
Oh, geez. Well, I can tell you the Pennsylvania Humanities Council did receive $1.4 million in relief and used it for equity and geographic diversity. I'm not sure how that helped in a pandemic time. Mr. Dodoro, can you tell me how much COVID cash went to CRT?
CRT?
Critical race theory and
Never heard of it, not familiar with it.
It's a racist curriculum used to teach children that somehow their white skin is not equal to black skin and other things in education.
Yeah. No, I do not know that, but I do know that there's provisions that the federal funds generally are not used, or supposed to be used for curriculum.
Oh,
that's a state.
Oh, Mr. Dodoro, I have to tell you, in Illinois, they received $5.1 billion.
Wow,
at an elementary school there that used it for equity and diversity.
Billion.
So it's being used for these things. Mr. Dodoro, can you tell me how much money was given to Drag Queen Story Hour?
I'm sorry, can you repeat that?
Drag Queen Story Time, where men dress up as women and read confusing books to children.
He's like, drag queens? I don't know what you're talking about. What are they? No, I have no idea. Never heard of them at all. Never. Ask the question again.
First, I thought you said dry clean. So, I'm sorry. No, I don't know the answer to either one of those two.
Oh, we need to look into this, and I urge you to do that. Bradbury Sullivan LGBT Community Center in Pennsylvania received $16,000 for Drag Queen Story Time from COVID cash.
That's not that much. It should have been $16 billion, you know.
I think this is an issue that needs to be looked into. A lot of this money went to things that it should have never gone to, and I thank you so much, and I yield back the remainder of my time.
All right, so Marjorie Taylor Greene asking some good questions. Where did the money go? And boy, oh boy, I had no idea Planned Parenthood got $80 billion. Think about how much money that is. Think about the size of that corporation, that entity that's just doing what it does. Unbelievable. All right, and so my friends, that is day one of the Oversight Committee. A lot of fun. I can't wait to continue covering what they are unpacking for us, and it's going to be a lot. We will continue to dive in. Thank you for subscribing wherever it is you're watching this. Thank you for liking this video. before you watch the next one, and we'll look forward to seeing you there. All right, my friends. Well, that is it for us on the day. We covered a lot of ground. We had some fun at the oversight hearing, heard from Boebert, Biggs, McClain, Marjorie Taylor Greene, and of course, James Comer. Also from the 3 individuals who are apparently going to be working to claw a lot of this money back. And I think they should claw it back. And I'd like to see who took it all in the first place. We got Kamala, who is explaining space to astronauts. Karine Jean-Pierre had a difficult time, well, had an easy time not answering questions. She's getting pretty good at it. Ian Sams was also out answering questions for the press about the continual cover-up attempts from the Biden administration. And now it is time to hear from you over from our friends at watchingthewatchers.locals.com. And of course, some of those super chats that came in on the YouTubes. Let's see who we have in store. And I appreciate all those very nice, generous donos that come in, helping to support the work. STFU FFS was here with a whole slew of them. Thank you, STFU. Let's see what we had here. Nope, hell nope, says that they are trying to cover this puppy up. Talking about the Biden docs. They're trying to smother it. Bunch of meanies. Says they might even be future ATF agents. From Nope, hell nope. Yeah, they are trying to cover it up big time. And I think they're all in on it. Viva swung on by, so shout out to our friend Viva Fry. He is on YouTube, and you can go over there and just subscribe to his channel. It just looks just like that. Outstanding content. The best, the best. And he's also on Locals at vivabarneslaw.locals.com, right next door to our amazing community. He says, quietly lurking and now loudly super chatting. Keep on keeping on, Govea. Well, thank you, Viva. I appreciate you, Viva. Viva is an inspiration to me and many others, and so we're happy that he swung by our lovely chat today. We got STFU in the house. He says, as a Mexican, ergo an official rep of the Leaf Blower Union. I didn't say it. He says, you're welcome for the perfectly timed lawn grooming, small appliance background ambiance. I love Leaf Blower Guy. He's perfect. He comes in right as the show is like warming up. It's, you know, it's very conveniently right around this time. We always get to say hi to him. And, you know, leaves are very problematic. They, you know, you track them into your house and they just get in the carpet and stuff. So we love our leaf blower guy. We have a lot of them around here. He says, bang that gavel harder, daddy. Says STFU. All right. He says, I'm so ashamed in parentheses. I'm ashamed for reading it. So we're in the same boat. Bear Ashby says, Rob, don't blame Trump. The House holds the purse. They do hold the purse. Yeah. And I think the Republicans were saying that, you know, because at that time, the Republicans were not in control of the House of Representatives. The Democrats were fully in control in 2020. And so what Comer's point was, is that they were adding all of these, you know, they wanted amendments and provisions so that they could monitor the spending, and the Democrats vetoed all of it. So now they have to go and claw it back. STFU has a Raskin comment. We'll leave that one there for you to read. Fred Petamonte says, Rob, my dog walked into the house today with Klaus Schwab, Bill Gates, and George Soros. Oh, my goodness. Yesterday, he was hanging out with Epstein. He said, these are some of my friends, and we don't like you watching Govea's show. Do you understand? Did Schwab have that little, you know, dictator accent to him? Do you understand? Something like that. Did he say that to you? Did your dog say that to you? You know? Gosh. Man, you have a wild life over there, Fred Petamonte. That dog is out of control. But, you know, let me know if they have any inside information on what the next pandemic is that they're planning for us. That'll be fun to know. Let us know. Send that back. STFU says, who wins an arm wrestling match, Boebert or MTG? Great question. That's a good poll question. We'll have to figure that out. Shooting from the hip, I think Boebert. Shooting from the hip on that one. She seems a little bit more, you know, she's a little wirier, I would say. But I think Boebert, if I had to say. Let's see if the chat says Marjorie Taylor Greene. Yeah, Mark Nielsen says MTG. Tough question. K Bean says Bobes. S says MTG 100%. Jay Cupper says Marjorie. Yeah, MTG on that one. Yeah, I'm not sure. It's a tough question. Not real sure about it. Zach Nichols says MTG has big brass. Peas and Butter says MTG. Goalies in the house. Both. Yeah, it'd be an interesting battle. And then you have to ask about the bros too. Like, what about the bros? Who would win between, oh gosh, like what about like a Matt Gaetz versus like a Hakeem Jeffries? That'd be fun. Yeah, I'd like to see some of that going on. That's how we should govern. Actually, that's how we should govern. Battles to the death in Congress. Whoever pins the other person gets to make the rules. I might run for office. STFU says, sir, would you classify this as a ton of money? That word of money? Yeah, it's a ton of money. It's an F ton of money, no doubt about it. STFU says, I heard most fraud money went overseas. Why would we send money overseas, you ask? Well, why are you asking so many questions? That's a good question. Well, why would we send over money? Send money overseas, you ask? Well, why are you asking so many questions? It was a pandemic, damn it. And we needed to spend money. That's all that there is to it. Yeah, good to see you, STFU. Says, you see, the DOJ takes as many as they can in their free time between prosecuting the grandmas for the J6ers and the parents for asking questions at school board meetings. Yeah, if they dedicated a little less time to playing Where's Waldo and finding all of the J6ers, maybe they could have clawed back some of that money. Alan Harkin says, great video. It is not easy to be entertaining and informative. Well, thanks for swinging by, Alan. And Alan's always very generous. We love Alan Harkin. Thank you, Alan, for dropping that in and saying hello for us. We like to have fun. And, you know, we wouldn't be able to do this stuff without you being here. Look at this little message. All short views on your channel are now being considered for Shorts feed, ad, and YouTube premium revenue sharing. Sweet, baby. So thank you for sharing those shorts over there. Those shorts will now generate revenue. So I'll probably get, like 50 or 75 cents from those, which will be really cool. I don't know what I'm going to spend it on, but I'll promise you this. When that short money starts rolling in, it's not going to change me, right? I'm going to be the same person. So we had that from Alan. Let's do a refresh on the channel, on the comments, because I saw a couple more come in. From our friend Bruce Leroy is in the house. He says, just reported thousands of government employees were working during the pandemic, collecting a paycheck and unlawfully collecting unemployment checks. They got caught. Yeah, so like that's another one, right? How much of that was going on? Like, I don't think we're going to see, Like, I don't think that we're going to see, a big group of like 50 people who stole $100 billion or whatever, or $10 billion. Like, it's not going to be that. It's going to be a ton of people who stole, a couple 100,000 here, or $1 million there for their business or whatever. And the scope of the problem is going to be so big that it's just going to be hard, I think, just as a matter of scale. The DOJ just doesn't have a matter of, doesn't have the ability to scale and claw all of it back. They'd have to hire 1 million lawyers. I mean, it'd be nuts. So it's just gone. And they'll tell Congress, oh no, we're going to claw it all back. But fast forward this 1 year from now, how much of this $560 billion is going to be back? How much? You want to take a guess? 5% maybe? We'll see. Here, all right, STFU is in the house and is saying, well, yeah, at least the dog is not identify as a congressperson, which is always a good thing. You don't ever want to become a congressperson if you can help it. That's when things get really scary out there. All right, we had another Rumble rant come in from our friends on Rumble. This one is from IR5 in the house, and we appreciate our Rumble friends. He says, thousands of words, yes, but not different ones. Always the same equals go ask somebody else. And we've been open and transparent, right? And that was during the Karine segment where Karine and Ian, right, they have the same broken record talking points that you'll hear every time they open their mouths. And so you can see we've got our Rumble friends in the house, ultra shout outs to NC Native. We've got Eric Scorpio, Dog Diggers in the house, Army Brat, all chatting away on our Rumbles platform as well. And we're grateful for everybody over there supporting those free speech platforms as we continue to rebuild the informational supply chains. And speaking of free speech platforms, let's check out what's going on over at Twitter, where, brace yourselves, we have a whopping 3 viewers. So shout out to everybody on Twitter. And let's take a look at some of the comments in the comment section before we go over to our locals after party. And we always like to do just a quick scroll through on some of these things just to make sure, they're nice and YouTube friendly. But the first comment is here from our friend Vientikis Prime. And this is a good place. You know, if you're watching the show and you're also on Twitter, it's a good idea, I think, to go and follow some other watchers, right? So like, for example, to go follow Vientikis Prime. He's at Vientikis. And so to go follow Jason on Blast, right? And I think it's a good way to stay connected and to grow the community. So Vientikis says, the most transparent White House ever. Being sarcastic, Jason says, like Eva. Also saw this one. Well, maybe crime does pay a little bit. Is that, that's not Batman. Another one from V. Says a lot of people are frying their brains. James says it wasn't Paul's device. Paul says some folks wanted me to post this. Ride free, bro. Totally. Yeah, man. That's, first of all, it looks like Arizona. And second, it's probably going to be me in about 20 years. Just get ready for it, America. All right. So thank you, Paul, on that one. Paul says, Rob, I think you should let people know that Meme Friday on your On Locals is going to be extra spicy. So only the strong should show up to see the carnage. Oh, gosh. So Paul is prefacing what's coming up on Friday, which is just 2 short days away from now. It's going to be out of control. We like to do Meme Fridays over on Locals. We're going to start doing some more, you know, things like that. And so Paul says, brace yourself for impact. Don't bring the kids to this one. It's going to be a doozy. We'll see if we can even talk about it on YouTube. I don't know. CA Human says CrossFitters always win. So who is the CrossFitter? Is that Bobert or Marjorie? Says they should search Biden's residence. Hopefully there's zombies on the next pandemic. We have a green comet apparently coming in, looking for this comet. We got a fat guy in a little coat comment here from our friend Chris Farley. May he rest in peace. Oh, yeah, we could do like a WWE battle. Marjorie Taylor Greene and Lauren Boebert versus AOC and Kamala. That would be a lot of fun. I would pay per view for that one. Adam says 504 billion still missing. Sounds like FTX. Just Waiting says we know they're all hiding the Biden docs. And Omnipotent says, I'm surprised that Kamala didn't refer to other things. All right. So those are some comments from our friends over on Twitter. TJ's in the house with some additional comments and some additional memes, which I will invite you to view over on the Twitter thread. Monkey's uncle says, interesting Trump appointee to NARA's public interest declassification board. This is interesting. On January 11th, Ezra Cohen was appointed by Trump to serve as the chair. Interesting. So that's from Monkey's uncle. All right, we'll take a look at that one too. But all right, my friends, that is it for us. Those are our friends over on Rumble. Those are our friends over on Twitter. And of course, we've got our Locals community, which is where we're going to go right now. And hang out for our after party. And the web address there is right there on your screen. Come and join us, watchingthewatchers.locals.com. We love the new members and the new names in the chat. We're grateful to see everybody over there. We also want to thank our sponsors, of course, Brickhouse Nutrition, which is a great place where you can go get your field of greens and stay healthy, stay vibrant, become bursting with energy, lose weight, lose everything. It's just going to be outstanding, except your health and wellness. Get it at Brickhouse Nutrition. Save 15% off with code Robert when you check out. Don't forget code Robert when you check out. And of course, our law firm, the R&R Law Group, located in Scottsdale, Arizona. We help good people charged with crimes find safety, clarity, and hope, and we look forward to helping good people get through a bad situation. Give us a call, 480-787-0394, online at rrlawaz.com. Also, thank you to the mods and our meme smiths. The mods keep the fort nice and orderly for us. Vientikis Prime, ultra shout-outs go to K-Bean, to Just Cause, to Lean, Playin' Hooky, Ronnie Cole, our friend Zulu, and Geomancy Games, who is on YouTube. You can subscribe. Also, our friend Paul Mino, Sleepy Dog Lee on Twitter, who is an amazing meme smith, with our other friend Jigum Gigum, who meme smith everything beautifully. I was going to say our meme smiths extraordinaire, but I had a difficult time saying that word for some reason. But now we are done. And so we're going to go over to watchingthewatchers.locals.com for our after party. I hope to see you there. But if we don't, well, then I hope you're back here tomorrow to do it all again. Because together with your help, we can shine that big, beautiful spotlight of accountability and transparency down upon our system with the hope of finding justice. Have a tremendous evening, my friends. Sleep very well. I'll see you right back here tomorrow. Bye-bye.